Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Hi, I'm j-fallon. This is The Slippery Slope, or you might be watching this on Aussie Police Watch. So a couple of stories came up, police stories came up. One is about New Zealand police, and it's a little practice that's been going on over there in New Zealand. Funny enough, another story came up about similar kind of practice, I suppose, that's been happening implemented in South Australia. Reminded me of something that took place. Of course, the practice isn't happening anymore, but in Queensland, they put out, Queensland, we put out a big report, we investigated, so put a stop to all of this nonsense. Yeah, of course. That's what they'll tell you anyway. I personally think it's still going on, but let's check out these. Let's check out these stories. And if you're wondering why I would want to talk about something like it's dangerous for everyone. If you're going to implement these kinds of practices for a police service, for a police force, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to do. Remember, these are people who need to be able to think quickly, who need to be able to oftentimes face down danger, who need to be able to make decisions in a split second about whether they should draw their weapon or not, to be able to assess a situation very quickly. So you would think you'd want a high standard of recruit. Apparently, no. Apparently, you don't need that. And anyway, we'll check out these videos.
A just-released audit of police recruits, an audit prompted by the Herald's reporting, confirmed breaches in police recruitment policy when it came to fitness, literacy and psychometric tests. The police minister and police commissioner were specifically questioned about dropping standards during Parliament's scrutiny week.
Who gave the order to drop standards at the police college in order to try and deliver the 500 quicker?
I don't think there was any. That is very operational, but just from my own viewpoint as minister, I don't think that there was any specific orders ever to drop standards.
The minister's correct. There was no direction or order.
Police Commissioner Richard Chambers later told reporters exemptions were applied by decision makers.
I love that. No directional orders. It's semantics. No directional orders. It's a similar thing to what, I won't say the name, but another commissioner, kind of a similar wording that another commissioner made here in Queensland. Well, it wasn't a direction. It was just encouraged, maybe. Just, a couple of emails sent out that encouraged people to do things. It wasn't a direction. And we all know that, just because the commissioner sends out an email, encouraging you to do something, well, obviously you don't have to go along with it.
In recruitment and others at Police College. He denied those in his leadership team told staff discretion could be applied.
Were they informed or directed by anyone on the police executive?
No, look, I'm not. There have been times in the past where discretion was applied.
Was that understanding that it was okay drilled into them by anyone on the police executive?
Sorry, say that again?
Was that understanding that was okay to use discretion? Was that informed to those decision makers?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
But the Herald can reveal Assistant Commissioner Jill Rogers, who's a front-runner to be Chambers' permanent deputy, did allow standards to be dropped for at least 2 applicants who didn't pass the fitness test. A police spokeswoman told the Herald, "We are searching available documentation to confirm this number." Labor's Ginny Anderson says that raises concerns about the minister's and the commissioner's public statements. Has the minister and commissioner misled the public?
I believe that both the Minister and the Commissioner have not been upfront with New Zealanders about the process at the Police College, and this risks undermining the integrity of the New Zealand Police. I asked a straight up question during scrutiny week as to whether a direction or an order was given for recruits to be let through, and the answer from both the Minister and the Commissioner of Police was that that had not occurred. And now this information that's come to light seems to contradict that.
The revelations come amid police efforts to hire an extra 500 frontline officers by November as part of government targets.
What's happened is the government and the senior executive, they have gone through, caused havoc, made enemies of police, causing a lot of police to leave. And then they come back, a couple of years later, oh, look at this problem. It's all right. We'll fix the problem. Like I've done episodes before. The same people that caused the flipping problem come back and say, look, we've got the answer. We can fix it. That's the same thing that old Katerina and what's that fella's name? The minister I could not stand, Mark, whatever his name. Anyway, the old police minister here in Queensland. It's the same thing they did. They caused the problem. They had all these people leaving. They had to cancel recruit intakes, training. They had to cancel a couple of that were all booked in to start. I think it was the start of 2023, I think. And they had to cancel them because they didn't have enough people, enough applicants, which is why we are so heavily recruiting now from overseas, from international recruits. So here's what's happening now in South Australia. So back over the Dutch. So here we go. Listen to this.
Are set to scrap spelling and numeracy tests.
Sorry, I'll go back to the very start.
I want to go to your state, Alex. The South Australian Police are set to scrap spelling and numeracy tests as part of the criteria for the Police Academy. The Police Minister, Stephen Mulligan, has said the change has been made, and I quote, in order to not knock back as many particularly young applicants. Now, here's a crazy thought, Alex, and I want you to hear me out on it. If you can't pass basic tests like spelling and math, maybe they shouldn't be applicants.
Yeah, well, look, the first thing I'd say about this is this actually really shows the crisis that we've got in amongst policing. Amongst other departments we might have, we've got a ramping crisis here in South Australia at our hospitals, and this is just another one that this Labor government is struggling with and having problems with. And I mean, look, every time I talk to one of our hardworking police officers here, they tell me that, for example, they didn't want to be out asking people whether they're still at home during COVID and knocking on doors, telling people to put on masks and so forth. They were sick of doing those sorts of things. The police joined the police force to catch crims.
So unfortunately, police were forced, a lot of police who went along with the mandates and stayed in the job at that time, they were forced to become enemies of the general public. It's all good as a police officer. You're thinking, well, I'm going to go out there and I'm chasing bad guys. I'm chasing criminals, people who are actually doing the wrong thing, doing illegal acts. But then when you're confronted with roles where you have to go out and confront people who are just trying to live a normal life and get through a very difficult situation, which no one really had any idea on how to work through at that time, and then you're treating people like criminals who aren't really, just because they want to go out and get a coffee without having to get a mask on, or just because the rules that the government have made up just yesterday aren't very clear and people aren't really sure on how they need to be behaving. And then you have neighbors dobbing on other people, treating everyone like a criminal. They made police officers at that time, they forced them into a role that a lot of them didn't want to be forced into, that they weren't comfortable doing. And because of this, you had a lot of people who ended up leaving. You had people who just didn't want to become potential recruits, thought, well, if this is the way policing's gone now, we don't want to be police officers anymore. And this is a problem that they've had. Queensland's had the same issue. Obviously, when Katerina Carroll and Mark Ryan were in, they made enemies of a lot of police. We had a lot of recruits who just no longer wanted to become potential recruits, no longer wanted to become recruits. We had recruitment intakes that were cancelled, training that was cancelled because of their inept decision-making. But then they turned around and said, oh, well, we've got the answer. We can fix this. And they glossed over the fact that they'd caused the problem. They caused the problem, but then they say, oh, we can fix it. It's all good. And this is what he's getting at here, I believe.
And so there's a serious amount of disquieting amongst SA police ranks. You're absolutely right. The answer to this, if there is a crisis in numbers, is not to just lower the bar to a point where you've turned the police academy at Largs here into the police academy starring Tackleberry and Mahoney from the 1980s. That is not the answer here. And this Labor government is papering over this, which is a very, very serious problem. Law and order being one of the most important things a state government can be responsible for. I can't believe this story. I'm absolutely shocked, to be honest.
Now, listen, don't for a second think that Queensland hasn't had the same issue. And we did it. We were doing this kind of thing even before the pandemic came out. This report that came out into discriminatory recruitment practices in Queensland that was going on because he didn't give a direction. It was just a suggestion, something like that. But the commissioner, they wanted to get a 50-50 ratio, so 50% male, female, 50-50. And it turns out that they were doing, they'd employed discriminatory practices in order to get it. They were actually just flat out lying. That's what was going on. So I'm just going to read, it's a bit too long to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read parts of the investigation, the outcomes and recommendations. So this was given by the CCC, the Crime and Corruption Commission, into the practices by the Queensland Police Service. Remember, a lot of these people will still be working. A lot of these people in recruitment, senior executive, all the senior officers, they're still senior officers. They've still got, Anyway, so discriminatory recruitment practices CCC investigation revealed ample evidence to support the conclusion that during the period of December 2015 to around 2018, in October 2018, the QPS engaged in discriminatory recruitment practices to achieve the 50% female recruitment target. When it says discriminatory recruitment, what it did, it lowered the standards, like what South Australia police want to do, what New Zealand police are doing, did do. They lowered the standard because they couldn't get enough really good female applicants. So instead of thinking, well, you know what, we just want the best females, so we'll just go with what we've got because we want the best. No, they thought, no, we'll lower the standards and we'll take whomever. Anyway, overall, the investigation showed around 2,000 male applicants were subject to discriminatory assessment practices, which prevented them from progressing through the recruitment process over an approximate 18-month period from 2016 to end of 2017. Between 2016 and 2018, approximately 1,231 recruits commenced, comprising of 653 males and 578 males. If the various discriminatory practices had not been implemented, the CCC estimates approximately 200 more meritorious male applicants would have been successful in their attempt to join the QPS. So just in that time frame alone, there are approximately 200 females in the job that wouldn't have their position if normal recruitment practices, if discrimination wasn't employed, they wouldn't have a role. The thing is, there's all this other talk about who was to blame. What the thought process was going on there. Did the commissioner at that time, did he actually give a direction and all this thing? PO14 says that to achieve the then commissioner's direction, a mandatory quota for female applicants existed, and this was the then commissioner's intention. They're talking about Commissioner Stewart. Ian Stewart, that discrimination was necessary to achieve the quota. Discrimination was appropriate and lawful, and the discriminatory practices were, or at least should have been, in the contemplation of the then commissioner and other QPS executives. PO14 further states that in the absence of discriminatory practices, there is no way to translate 30% of female applicants into 50% of recruits. It was reasonable to expect that the then commissioner and other executives would have at least been aware that some level of discrimination in the recruitment of QPS applicants was required. The evidence clearly shows that staff and management in the QPS recruiting section knew that discriminatory practices were used to achieve the 50% female recruitment target. I betcha most of them still have their jobs. The examples highlighted in this report all show how staff and management in the QPS recruiting section provided information that was evasive, misleading, and did not answer the questions asked. There was a lack of honest reporting. Oh, why would you have honest reporting within a police service? You don't need that. There was a lack of honest reporting to a host of audiences, both internal and external, to the QPS. Oh, staff members and managers of the QPS recruiting section consistently claim the reason they implemented this discriminatory processes to achieve the 50% female recruitment was because they had been directed by the then Commissioner of Police to achieve it. This was despite significant correspondence showing they also repeatedly referred to it as an aspirational target. Whatever. Listen, there was another section I wanted to go down. So, despite the misleading reporting, the QPS senior executives during that time showed a lack of sound governance. That's the executive, lacked sound governance. Mistakes were made, and the senior executives could have done more. You read this line and you're sitting there going, you know very well that nothing's going to happen. They're basically just giving them a bit of a soft landing. Mistakes were made. That's all. Just a few mistakes. No big deal. Just mistakes. You just screwed with a lot of people's futures, with their careers. It's just mistakes. Mistakes are made. You know, how could Queensland Police Service senior executives really be held accountable? Well, they weren't really held accountable, to be honest. The initial letter requesting implementation of the strategy from the then commissioner was ambiguous in its messaging around whether the strategy was aspirational or a direction. Like I said, because if you get a letter, if you get an email from a commissioner, of course you think, oh, it's just aspirational. It's not a direction at all. It's just, if you possibly could, don't go out of your way. Just if you want to do it. Of course, that's the way all commissioners' letters come across. Although this is denied by the then commissioner, that message was not clarified at any stage. The maths never stacked up and no one looked behind the numbers. No one. To translate 30% of applicants into almost 50% of recruits over 3 successive years raises the obvious question about whether discrimination was involved. As one witness said, it failed a grade 4 math test. Well, if the standards are lowered in South Australia, grade 4 math tests aren't going to matter anyway. So I love this. 316. Some of the core skills of a police officer are to have an inquisitive mind, check facts, probe and ask questions, and not to accept information at face value until it is proven. The actions of some of the QPS executives over that time could be seen to lack those core skills. Anyway, look, just this one part more. Recommendations: criminal and disciplinary action. The Triple C concluded there was insufficient evidence to support criminal action against any person arising out of this investigation. So, in other words, all these things were done wrong, but we're not really going to make anyone accountable, truly accountable. Not really. I'm just talking about what happened in Queensland. For one, I think these practices are still in place. I think they just got the scapegoats that they needed, and then they've just moved on and they've continued the process. So why I'm showing you this is because you can see how they lowered the standards in Queensland. I think it's already still in place, but now they're doing this in New Zealand and South Australia. They want to lower the standards. The problem is when you lower the standards like this is why I believe Queensland has such a high, we have the highest rate of police shootings now across the nation. I firmly believe that we have lowered the standard to a point we've got far too many people, far too many females and males we've got far too many police who should not have had their job. So we've got all these people who, a few years ago, they wouldn't have made it through the assessment process, through the recruitment process. But because you've got people in there who aren't fit, who aren't really appropriate to work as police officers, they can't handle the pressure. They can't make decisions the way that you need to be able to make decisions as a police officer. They can't assess situations sufficiently, and they get into situations They can't handle situations. We have far too many police shootings. I think this is why we have it. You're going to see the same issues coming up in South Australia if they continue this practice in New Zealand as well. All you're going to do is see violence towards civilians being raised because you've got police in the job that shouldn't be in there. It makes it dangerous for the whole community. It makes it dangerous for good police who are in the job. If you're working with, I've worked with officers who shouldn't have been in the job, and it makes things dangerous for you because you have people who go and escalate a situation when you should be de-escalating. It makes things dangerous for you, makes things dangerous for the civilians that you're dealing with. You cannot have people who cannot, be able to think clearly, rationally, intelligently. You can't lower your standards like they're doing. Queensland's done it. We've paid the price, I believe, by having a higher amount of police shootings, the highest amount of police shootings across the nation. I think it's for a couple of years now. It's been going on. Queensland's had more police shooting civilians, more than any other state. At one point there, we had more than every other state combined. This is what happens when you lower your standards. This is what happens when you have governments that attack police. You know what happens when they go and attack police? They go and attack nurses. You go to a certain hospital in my district at the moment, and mate, their nursing practices and doctors' standards are very much below par. And I wouldn't say it's because of the nurses that are there. It's because they don't have the numbers. So many nurses just left the job because of the actions that the government took a couple of years ago, and we were in trouble. Governments went and made all these decisions. They screwed over the people that they're supposed to be serving, and then they try and say, oh, we can fix the problem by lowering standards. All you're doing is causing more problems. Anyway, this is all my opinion. Let me know what you think. It's interesting going over that report by the CCC and seeing how little action has actually been taken, how people didn't actually have to answer, really answer. The people who are actually involved, who are actually responsible, didn't have to answer for it. And yet you're seeing how South Australia and New Zealand going down the same path, lowering the standards because they've all screwed up with their recruitments. Anyway, this is all just my opinion. I'm j-fallon. Let me know what you think. Check out my music. I'm j-fallon, and thanks for listening.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher.